Hopefully, at the end of this hour, you'll confidently go into the direction of your garden dreams and have a healthy and productive fall and winter garden. What we're going to be covering today are several topics. So we've got a lot to cover in an hour. And please know that pretty much any of these slides could be its own hour presentation. But as we do move from one season to another, we're going to be talking about things that maybe we didn't think about even just a couple of years ago, that now we need to think about, and the basics of what do we need to do to have a healthy garden, some options for you to grow in this magical climate of ours, and some tips on how to make sure that it's your best garden yet. I mentioned a minute ago that we now need to talk about and think about items that a couple of years ago may not have been on our radar at all, but now we are. I am sure you have heard of the insect apocalypse is upon us. We've lost 3 billion birds since 1970. We are seriously out of balance with nature. And Dr. Doug Ptolemy, hopefully you have heard of them. If you have not, I highly recommend watching one of his seminars on YouTube or reading some of his books. He's published over 80 research papers. He's written several books, but he's a professor in the entomology and wildlife ecology department in the University of Delaware. And he studies the interrelationships of the plant and animal kingdom in the hopes of better understanding how to right this listing ship we call planet Earth in terms of ecology, and global climate weirdness. So here's his quote, and I think he's spot on. So we used to just say, just give me a pretty garden. But now we need to ask a lot more of our gardens, because if we have been given responsibility for land, we now have the responsibility to keep it as healthy as possible and to invite in species and animals and wildlife. And they can be teeny, tiny, but we need to invite them in and provide safe corridors so that they can get from one spot to another. Because I'm sure you've probably also heard over 1 million species are in danger of extinction. It's up to you and me and the backyard gardeners to help this, and we can. So here are some things to consider as you move into your fall season and further, and even into next year. We, of course, are going to talk a little bit about healthy soil. The leaves are going to start falling soon. Please leave them. Nature would not have designed leaves to fall from a tree just to have them carted away. Leaves are great mulch. Whole ecosystems depend on those leaves staying where they fall. So please consider leaving some more of the leaves, seeing how many you can leave on your property. You can mulch them, you can grind them up a little bit, but they need to stay where they fall. We have been told that, oh my gosh, if you want more blossoms, you better deadhead any flower that has gone past its beauty stage. Well, yes, but winter is coming. It's not just a TV show. And we need to provide something that's real and natural and part of our ecology that birds can eat. So can you leave some of those seed heads so that the birds and any migratory critters passing through have something to eat this winter? Likewise, yes, a lot of our grasses and a lot of our bushes, we tend to prune down pretty severely to put the garden to bed for winter. Well, guess what? In our climate, the garden doesn't really go to sleep. So if we can leave the grasses a little taller, if you can leave some of the dead stuff that maybe we used to think was not that attractive, can we leave it? Because some of those hollow stems, some of the good wasps need a safe place to rest for the winter. What can we put in our gardens that would provide year-round blooms? And I'm not talking hybrids that may have sterile pollen and nectar. What natives can we put in? What can we do to extend the season that our bees and our butterflies and our birds, the moths, the bats have something to eat? Likewise, water. We always think, oh, surely they've got water somewhere. Well, that place of water may be dependent on you. Can you do puddling stations for the butterflies and bees? They can't swim, they can't go very deep, they need shallow, but they do need moisture. And here was one that was fairly new to me as I started studying more of Dr. Ptolemy's work. Noise pollution. Hopefully, everybody's migrating now toward the battery powered um, uh, yard tools and not the gas powered stuff, which is horrible for the environment, any way you want to look at it. And the, the light pollution. Humans are absolutely altering migratory patterns. They are altering the way that night creatures move around. So if you do have the big lights in the yard, and of course motion detectors are great. We want to stay safe, but just make sure that all those lights are pointed where they need to go, not out into space. If we can have covers on them so that the light doesn't go above the fixture, that can really be helpful. Is there a way that you could leave a bit of the garden, what maybe formerly have been considered untidy, that now is considered, oh, that's an asset, a rock and a brush area? Where are the lizards going to stay? What can attract a little heat during the day, but has cubby holes that maybe frogs? Oh my gosh, not many people have frogs anymore. They're a keystone species. They will come back if we provide them habitat. And the unmulched area, see those little bumblebees up in the upper right-hand corner? Oh, yes, mulching is great for keeping moisture close to the soil. It's great at regulating temperature, soil temperature. And our bumblebees, a lot of our native bees, they can't get through it. They need cracks and crevices to go through so that they can make their homes. And as we already mentioned, the more natives we can get in, the better off, because they're already acclimated to our climate, and they actually also help provide corridors to the species that may be, and the plants, and I mean the animals that may be passing through. So just think about these as we go through this slide deck, and every time you bring something new into your garden, can you be asking, what can I do that will promote life, that will manage water, that will sequester carbon, and that will attract more pollinators? If you've been watching some of these talks before, this is a familiar looking slide. We will briefly touch upon all of 4 of these because nothing's happening without sun, soil, water, and air. Job 1 for everybody is building healthy soil. You've probably been from what's the word? You've been told about this before. So healthy soil is about what, 45% minerals that come from degraded rock. It's 5% organic matter. It's about 25% air, 25% water. Now, in that 5% organic matter, we want humus, we want compost, we want worms, we want leaves, we want all the little creepy crawlies that we may not like to pick up and think they're nice and cuddly, but they really help the porosity, the friability, the nutrient load of our soil. We will be talking about some ways to do that tonight. It's the end of the season. You may wish to test your soil. We know that our solanaceae are pretty greedy feeders, and they take up a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium and maybe some calcium. So you can get a kit and order, or you can order it, or you can buy it at a store. It's kind of a fun test to do, especially if you haven't done it before. You can also send your soil samples off to different places around the country at differing price points that will tell you exactly what's going on in your soil. So that is certainly an option. Your other option is, when you go to put in your next crop, just make sure that you are using some organic soil food. And by organic, I'm not meaning fungicide, pesticide, miticide, rodenticide free. Organic does mean carbon-based here, but it does also here mean you want it as pure as possible. If you can pick up the soil food, If you can read the ingredients and you know where it came from, kelp, bone meal, blood meal, feather meal, fish hydrolysate, anything that you've got a pretty good idea of what the original source of that was, that's probably an okay thing because we feed the soil. We don't feed the plants. If you are using synthetic fertilizers, and I will use the word fertilizer there, most of them are salt-based, not table salt, but those salts can build up over time. Those synthetic fertilizers do feed the plant, but we want to feed the soil. Healthier the soil, the healthier the plant. The healthier the plant, the healthier the fruit or the whatever it is we're eating off of that plant, and it goes into you, the healthier you're going to be. Crazy thing. Plants need NPK, the potassium, the phosphorus, and the potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen. Lo and behold, humans need it too. It's an interesting exercise to match nutrient for nutrient, what plants need and how and why we need them as well. Water. Would you believe that October is the month that most gardeners in Contra Costa County tend to overwater? We water not just on what type of soil we have and how old or how mature the plant is. We water on day length. Our days are getting shorter. So yes, we've got a heat wave coming up. We're going to be in the 90s the next couple of days. So of course, look at your plant, but those temperatures are going to come down because the day length is shorter. And we typically don't need as much water in October as we think we do. How are you going to measure it? I personally love my fingers, but you can get a moisture meter over there on the bottom left hand if you would like. You can get a soil probe on the bottom right hand there. And of course, just watch your plants, but definitely monitor your water usage right now. There are reports that we've got an El Nino headed our way, and the prognosticators say it may or it may not be a wet winter. We are hoping that we are going to get some rain and enough rain, but not too much rain to cause the picture that you're looking at right here. When the soils get waterlogged, or if we're walking in the bed and they get compacted, or maybe we've got a super special on adobe clay and we haven't been amending the soil. When we have it too compacted or too wet, it kills the oxygen. The oxygen goes away, which means the earthworms die, which means all those critters down below, the bacteria and the fungi and the nematodes and the protozoas and all the things we need for healthy soil, they can't live because just like you and I, above ground, they need that oxygen, that air below ground. So we want to make sure that we are not compacting our soils. If you go to any place that sells plants, or you are seeding your own, most likely you're going to run into some information that says this plant needs full sun or half sun or part sun. These are some great definitions of what those terms mean. We may not get full sun in the winter like we do in the summer because there's so much more slant of the winter sun, but most of us can generally get half or part sun, and we can grow a lot of vegetables just with those. We do want to protect if we get too much sun. Now, this heat wave is not going to last that long. I'm seeing like 2 days, but if you've got a prize crop, your peppers are their absolute peak of perfection, but you're not ready to pick them yet, maybe you want to put some shade cloth over them that will knock out some of the UV and knock out some of the sun's intensity for the next couple of days. We have taken off all our shade cloth at Rodgers Ranch and El Monte, so I'm kind of hoping it's only 2 days and it's not going to be that bad. So what can we grow in Contra Costa County? Well, before we think about what to grow, we need to be aware of something. Persephone. The Greeks had a great myth about why plants slow down so dramatically, or why they even just stop growing during the winter months. Now, you and I know now that it's the magic number is 10 hours from sunrise to sunset. Once we pass the less or fewer than 10 hours of sunlight a day, the plants kind of kick back and go, I'm not feeling it. I'm just going to hang out here until we pass the other side of 10 hours. So Persephone, the goddess, she was Demeter's daughter who got kidnapped by Hades and taken down to the underworld. She is below ground for about 3 months. We are super fortunate being at the 38th parallel that winter, and especially in our Mediterranean climate, one of only 5 in the world, we can grow pretty much year round. But between November 19-ish, these are Walnut Creek figures, and January 13th, we are under 10 hours. So what this means to you and me is before the 19th, our crops don't just need to be in the ground, they need to be flourishing, meaning today is a really good day to get your fall crops in the ground. And tomorrow will be fine too. Just make sure you get them in fairly quickly because they need to have the next couple of weeks to get firmly established. They're making friends with all the critters that are down there around their root zone, and they've still got enough sunlight and enough heat to get established. Now, about January 13th, we pass 10 hours. We start gaining a couple of minutes every day, and our plants will start growing well again then. So now we go to, so what are we going to plant? You've got 2 options. You can put seeds directly in the soil, or you can start seeds in seed trays and let them grow up until they've got their second set of leaves and transplant them, or you can go any place that buys plants and buy a seedling. Root vegetables, your carrots, your turnips, your radishes, salsify, anything that is the primary part that we eat is going to be underground, is easiest to plant directly in the soil. If you want to, things that should normally be transplanted because it's easier on the plant and easier on you, are those that you see here, the brassicas. Included also on here would be kale and collard greens. What can you do either way? Well, there's a nice list there under the either way category. At the ranch and at school, we have no fewer than 11 reasons we start pretty much everything in seed trays, especially when the summer crops are still producing. I can be growing my transplants, and I don't even have to have them in the greenhouse because it's just not that cold at night right now. But try it both ways. If you can, try something by direct sowing it and put it in a little seed tray and see which way is easier for you, which way you have better results. Gardening is full of experimentation. What can we plant like today or tomorrow or very, very soon? You're looking at some beautiful brassicas right there. So the Romanesco, the cauliflower, the broccoli, so many different types of cabbages. And know that with the exception of the Romanesco and the cauliflower, so the broccolis and the cabbages, you can get early season, mid-season, and late season on these, which means you can really stagger your season. Some of the broccolis can be ready in like 50 days, 45 or 50 days. And then you've got some, they're going to be hanging out for like 75 or 80 days. So the big thing is get them into the ground very soon. Broccoli has a special place in my heart, and hopefully it has a special place in your heart as well for several reasons. There are many different varieties. We already said early, mid, and late season, but there are also some that will set a really big head, a primary head, and then after you cut that on the diagonal, and the way you want, the reason you want to harvest any of your fall or winter vegetables on the diagonal is if and when we do get rain, the water will slide off of that cut, not pool in a horizontal cut where you could get some disease or some rot or some mold or mildew set in. So just cut everything on the diagonal, water will run off of it, and the plant should stay fairly healthy. So some set really big heads. There are others that you basically are just growing them for side shoots, and they come up a lot faster. You get a lot more of them. So in your seed catalogs, or when you're looking at the plant descriptions, just be aware of, is it going to set a really big head, or are there going to be a lot of smaller shoots starting earlier? The other thing a lot of people don't recognize, broccoli leaves are delicious. My kids will come into the garden and they'll just tear off little bits of them and just eat them, because guess what they taste like? Yeah, broccoli. You can cut them up, you can saute them, you can put them in soups. So you can use a lot more of the plant than you may have thought of. So you get a lot more mileage out of them, and the nutrition is off the charts. I love this picture. One of the main reasons I love this picture, that's a cabbage. If you've never grown cabbage before and you've only bought cabbage at the farmer's market or the grocery store, you may have no idea that cabbages can easily go 3 feet across and 2.5, 3 feet tall. And I tell you this because if you're planting cabbage, you need to know how big they're going to get. So this is a great picture. Now, not all cabbages get this big. And Napa cabbage, if you're into making kimchi, is awesome. Napa cabbage is going to grow more vertically, and it's going to be a much smaller head, but it's totally worth doing. So you can, with your cabbages, tie the leaves up if you want one of those perfect heads, but you're going to need to make sure that the critters are not eating them, that we're going to get to in just a minute. Kohlrabi is an amazing vegetable, super popular in Europe, not as well known here for reasons I cannot comprehend. It is that bulb. It's one of the few bulbs we eat. Other bulbs, it's one of the few stems we eat. Asparagus and celery being two of the others. That stem that you're looking at, that swollen stem you're looking at, is sweet. It's crunchy. It's crispy. It's kind of like a sweet jicama. The stems and the leaves, again, totally edible. And look at that beautiful purple color. They come in purple or green. Some of the kohlrabis are small. There's one called a super schmelz that's massive, and it holds for flipping ever. So try it. And okay, if you haven't tried it before, part of me says go to the grocery store and buy one, but I can't promise you how fresh that kohlrabi is going to be. The older they are, the less sweet they become. But if they're at the farmer's market, grab one and see. I just cut it up. You can eat it like carrot sticks or celery sticks, or you can put it in salad, or you can cook with it. All parts are edible except for the part underground. There were a couple of years that we would plant broccoli at the ranch, and it just didn't really head up. And it's like, so what? Why? I mean, it's in decent soil. Well, I had two problems going on. One, I did not believe in the wisdom of Persephone. That under 10 hour sunlight a day deal, it's for real. We really need to honor it. The other thing is, I didn't feed the soil. The brassicas do need some additional feeding. So yes, when I transplant them in, I put a little worm castings in there. I put a little soil food in there, but I need to be feeding them at least once a month. So that may be some of it. If you also have tried broccoli and it just didn't head up the way that you wanted it to, are you feeding it? When did you get it put in? This is going on as we speak. If you see the leaves, they're just being chewed. There's a easy way to figure out what's going on. If you can get out into your garden before 8 a.m., turn the leaves over, and you will probably find, let's see, a couple of things going on here. The cause is this cabbage worm butterfly. It's so pretty. Everybody thinks, oh, what a pretty little thing. Well, I guess so, but it's really detrimental to our brassicas. The picture in the middle there is an egg blown up like 100 times. So they do lay them on the underside of your leaves. They're going to be just little baby dots. But if you just rub your finger, you rub your thumb on the underside of the leaves, that should take off the eggs. And you're looking for these little teeny caterpillars on the right-hand side there. They start out like 1/8 of an inch long. They're tiny, but they have voracious appetites. I picked off one this morning at school that was about 1.5 inches. It was about to get ready to pupate into the butterfly. I don't know how I missed it on other days, but there it was. So a couple of days, you're going to need to get out there if you notice damage. It can be a little bit of snail, a little bit of slug, but this time of year, cabbage worm, butterfly. Got a couple of solutions. One, there are some natural enemies to this. This tachinid fly over there on the left, if you can provide it something to eat so that it wants to be there, and it's not just waiting for the cabbage worm, the butterflies to come around. If you can have some flowering herbs for them, some dill, some cilantro, anything in the aster family, chamomile, feverfew, Shasta daisy, if you provide some plants that are flowering that tachinid fly wants to be around anyway and is feeding from, when they see the cabbage worm, they'll just look over and go, let me go find my protein for the day. And they will help take the care of the cabbage worm. If you've got a bad problem, or even if you just want to be prepared in case a bad problem comes, go get some Bacillus thuringiensis, otherwise known as BT. This is it's labeled as an organic, and it basically, you're going to spray it lightly on the underside of the leaves. You can spray it on the other side, on the upper side of the leaves as well if you want, but primarily the butterfly is landing on the underside of the leaves. So they eat it, and it makes their little bellies explode. It's quite fun. You don't actually see it, but suddenly you just don't have a problem anymore. So it's pretty good to have around, and just follow the instructions on the back of the container, and you should be good to go. And cabbage worm butterfly problem should be no more. A recommendation: if you are just putting in your brassicas, if you can use some row covers, they go by the name of maybe Remay or Agribon. These are on the right-hand side. Or if you've got some fine mesh that lets in water, that lets in the sun, but is fine enough that the butterflies cannot get through it, put that down and you avoid the whole problem. You won't even need the BT. You won't need to be out there before 8 o'clock every morning getting all the worms and the eggs off of the leaves. And also the other reason you want row covers is if the nights ever do start getting really cold, having that row cover over will buy you several degrees of temperature protection. Here could be another problem. You go out and they're looking great one day, and the next day you go out and it's like, why are they flowering? Could be a couple of reasons. One, we could be having heat spikes, and the broccoli is going, I think I probably need to set seeds really fast because it's really hot now, and this isn't what I signed up for. Fear not. If they do start to go to flower, you've got a couple of options. One, go ahead and harvest it. Turns out flowers from brassicas are delightful. They are delicious. They taste great. You can sprinkle them in salads. You can put them on top of soups. My kids love going out. They will ask, where are the broccoli flowers? Where are the cauliflower flowers? So that is an option. The other option is let it go all the way through its natural life cycle. If you've never done this before, I highly recommend it for several reasons. One, you get to see how long does it take from seed to seed. Two, once all of those little baby florets open, it is a beautiful bouquet. See, the bugs, the bees absolutely love it. It's great nectar and pollen for them. And finally, if I let it go all the way through, those flowers turn into seed heads. I got a lot of broccoli seed for the next year, and I will let some of it fall where it grew. And next year, I might have broccoli coming up before I would normally plant it. But nature knows what it wants to grow, where, and when. Most of the time, well, a lot of the time, it's got a lot more intelligence than I do. So if the plant opens before you're ready, just harvest it or let it go and enjoy the ride. We can also do a lot of our root crops starting now. including turnips. There are some small salad turnips that are fairly fast growing. I can't remember the name on it. It's like hakurai or something. But they are so sweet, so delicious. I think there's like a 45-day crop. So it's really amazing. But carrots, beets, they grow well in containers. And I especially can recommend containers if you've got like adobe clay soil. And otherwise, the beets and the carrots would be really fighting hard to grow straight. So what are you going to do? You definitely prepare the soil. If you're going to be working in a bed, make sure the soil is fairly loose. Please know that carrots are one of the slower germinations of all of our seeds. It's literally 3 weeks. And it's not just 3 weeks of, I'm going to go out and water when I remember it. No, you're going to be going out and watering pretty much all the time. They've got to be kept moist. If there's any variation in the moisture level, the little seeds can go, I don't think this is working for me. I'm not going to germinate. So what we do at the ranch, we have overhead spray. Normally we just do drip irrigation, but whenever we are starting crops, we will put overhead misters on it so that we can make sure we're keeping moist soil. And like there are carrots of all lengths. If you look at any of the seed catalogs, you'll see, and some of them will actually show you the carrots in a scale so you can see exactly how short or how long they can grow. If you're in clay, get shorter ones. Okay, I think if you are working in clay and your carrots look like this, the carrots were trying so hard to grow straight, but they ran into a piece of something they could not go through, so they had to go around. However, if your carrots look like this, you can make great conversations about what they're talking about to each other. Big caveat here. These seeds for your root vegetables, most of them are tiny, and I'll show you in just a slide. Make sure you don't put too many seeds in too narrow a spot. Now, beet greens are amazing. Hopefully nobody's ever thrown away beet greens. The beets are great, but the beet greens are magical, especially with some hot pepper vinegar on them. If you want to grow them for microgreens, okay. But if you want to get beets and regular sized plants out of them, you're going to need to give them some space. Read the seed packets, read what it says on the starts that you buy. So look at that. That's a penny over there on the left-hand side. Look at the size of these seeds. They're super, super tiny. And if you have too many of them growing too close together, it will look like a forest, like it does in the pot right there. Two options. You can get pelleted seeds, which means the seeds, and it's not just for carrots, you can get it for lettuce, you can get it for a lot of different vegetables. They are wrapped in inert clay, so that when they go into the soil and they get wet, the clay dissolves and then the seeds can sprout. But you can also just do this wonderful carrot seed tape, or you can do it just with a lettuce seed tape. So get some paper towels, cut them into strips, find what the spacing is for your root vegetable or for lettuce or whatever it is you're using. Just get some water-based glue. Just put a little dot of water-based glue at the spacing your seed packet tells you, and then dig your little trench, your shallow trench, put the seed tape in there, lightly, gently cover it with the soil, water it in, and I think you'll be pleased with the results. Who doesn't love a sugar snap? It is definitely time to have them in the soil. I don't know if I would start them from seed right now. I mean, you could try it, but because they do grow fairly fast, they will germinate in under a week, and they can be ready to go in the ground in about another 2 weeks after that, or you can try direct seeding them. But if you do want to do the seeds, and maybe you want to do this in February, soak your legumes, soak your seeds for at least an hour, and depending on the size of the seed, like fava beans that we'll get to in a minute, they can go 24 hours, because the more you can loosen up the seed coat, the faster they can germinate. But these are all ready to go in the ground today. onions, garlics, leeks, shallots. All of these are fairly easy to grow, and this is the time to get them in. I would not recommend going to the grocery store to get garlic, but if you've got a good relationship with some of the farmers at the farmers market and you know they're growing organically, you know they're growing practices, then you could probably get some organic garlic from them and plant that. You can also order from a lot of the seed catalogs, and some of these stores, I believe, I haven't checked it recently, I'm a little behind. Some of the stores, the nurseries around here, usually sell garlic and onions. You can use the onion sets that you see in the lower left-hand corner. You can plant those now, and they'll grow fairly quickly for the next couple of months, and you can have green onions into early December. This has not happened to me, but I understand it can happen fairly frequently. So you put some onion, maybe you got those onion sets, and it's like, you know what, I'm going to leave them. I'm going to let them go through next May, and I'm expecting a good onion harvest. Well, let's say we get a bunch of hot weather, and all of a sudden the onion goes, I don't have time to set a bulb. I'm going to have to go to flower so I can get some seed set, because your alliums are a biennial crop. That's 2 years it takes them to go from seed all the way to next seed. So if the onions get hot and you've already bought something that's been around for a year, and like the onion sets, they may think, oh boy, I got to go straight to flower. Fear not. You actually have a gorgeous crop going. Even if it does not set a bulb, each of those flowers is a little burst of onion goodness. You can put them in salads, soups, omelets, a splash of color and taste anywhere where you would normally use an onion. Also, bees love them. And now, admittedly, onion honey has got a kind of a different taste to it, but it's just let it go. It'll be fine. Harvest the flowers. How are you going to prevent it from trying to go to flower quite so quickly? You can get the little onion bulbs like you're looking at the lower right-hand corner. Shallots. Have you priced shallots recently? They're fairly easy to grow. If you start with one shallot bulb, then you plant them just like you would any other allium. And as you can see over in the right, then you can have 2, 3, or 4 shallots when it comes time to harvest them. Think about the 6 plant parts: roots, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, and seeds. For something to go through that entire life cycle, especially the fruits and seeds, they need long days, lots of sunshine, lots of temperatures. In winter, we have short days. Hopefully we have some rain, and we have cooler temperatures. So we're going to be using roots, stems, and leaves. As we look at these pictures here, we've got spinach, we've got lettuces, we've got chard, we've got some red lettuce up there, we've got some beautiful kale. So all of those can be grown because they only need 4 to 6 hours of sunlight a day, and they actually get better with cooler temperatures. Let's say, oh, Marian, I am so busy right now, I just don't have time to get any winter crops in right now. Fear not, you can start again in February. After our last expected frost date, which I think is January the 15th, with global weirding, who the heck knows anymore? All historical data is just like stoplights in Italy. It's just a suggestion. We're just going to have to watch it and see what happens. But as a rule, around February, you could put in, again, some onions, and you could put in some potatoes. We do recommend that you grow potatoes in containers. Potatoes are part of the Solanaceae family. They can be subject and prone to some of the soil diseases, your verticillium wilt, your fusarium wilt, maybe your nematodes. And if you can grow them in a container, you can use fresh potting soil, or you can use whatever soil you want to make. And harvesting is much easier in a lighter soil. Also, if you're using a lighter weight soil, the potatoes don't have to work so hard to grow underground. So a lot of fun, and potatoes are just gorgeous. If you hand harvest, you've grown them yourself, you harvest them, you have them for supper that night, it's a transcendent experience. Again, You can start again in the fall. You can plant more brassicas, your broccoli, your kohlrabi, your kale, your lettuces, your radishes. So you've got lots of options. So if you miss this window before Persephone goes underground, you're still good to go. This is the last section. I'm going to fly through this, not just because we're running out of time, but because we do have on the Master Gardener YouTube channel a webinar creatively entitled Cover Crops. And it's a little over an hour, so it should answer a lot of questions, but this is such a critical component. I want to take you back to Dr. Ptolemy's quote of, we need to sequester carbon, we need to manage water, we need to support life, and we need to feed the pollinators. So a cover crop is basically one or more plants seeded intensively over your beds so that we are crowding out weeds, replenishing nutrients, and opening up new pathways underground. It's especially great for breaking up adobe clay, and it's also really great at adding structure to sandy soil. So even if you don't want to grow anything that you could eat this fall and winter, cover crops are a really good idea, because it used to be, oh, we should just leave that bed fallow. I'm just not going to do anything with it, and nature will take care of it. I'll let the bed rest, and then when I need to go and plant in it next spring, it'll be all better. No, we know way too much now to let that fallacy remain true. We need roots in beds at all times. And there's a super easy way to do that, and that is with cover crops. You can grow cover crops in warm season, you can grow cover crops in cool season, but cool season, they really thrive. So what are we looking at? Two distinct varieties, or two distinct categories. Legumes are our peas and our beans and plants that have this superpower of being able to pull nitrogen out of the air above ground and below ground and shunt it to the roots where the plant can use it and the critters in the soil can use it. So legumes, think nitrogen. Grains, on the other hand, are phenomenal for increasing biomass above ground and opening up soil below ground. What kinds are we talking about? For the legumes, there are all kinds of vetch that you can use. The challenge with a lot of these, and a big challenge with vetch, is you've got to cut it down before it reaches this stage. The flowers are really pretty, but it goes from flower to seed in about 47 seconds. And we've got to stop it from going into seed, because once it gets established, you will have vetch for the rest of your life. That's not a bad thing. You just need to know that it's less work if you cut it down before it goes to flower. So vetch is phenomenal about fixing nitrogen. Next up, we have the clovers. We've got a beautiful red clover here. There are all different sizes of clovers, from 2 inches tall to 2 feet tall. Bees love clovers and they fix nitrogen. Yay, go team. The next picture over here is of a pea. I don't know if it's an Austrian field pea or a biomaster pea, but I love growing winter peas as a cover crop. Not only is it fixing nitrogen, but I'm somewhat utilitarian. Any plant I grow, I want it performing a minimum of 2 functions. These peas I can eat as a salad, or these pea plants I can eat as a salad all winter long. The tendrils and the leaves all taste like fresh peas. I actually, again, do not want this going past this flower stage. It's still going to take this one a while to set fruit, to set the pods, but the peas on this stuff taste terrible. You'd never want to eat them. So the tendrils and the leaves are magnificent. And one of my all-time favorites, on the right-hand side, fava beans. Anybody that says they don't like favas has likely not had fresh favas off of the plant. So how you do this is they can get to be 6 feet tall, sometimes more than that. I plant these on 6-inch centers, meaning from one seed to the next seed, or from one seedling to the next seedling. 6 inches apart. We use 6-inch emitters at the ranch and at school, so my spacing is very, very easy to figure out. When they get to be about half flower, so they're a couple of feet tall, the flowers are starting to move up the stalk, I will cut down every other one. And I'm going to do a chop and drop. We'll get to that in just a minute. But this way, the soil has a lot of nitrogen in it, because if you were to let the flowers go into pods, the nitrogen gets pulled up out of the plant and into the pod, of course, because it's setting up seed for the next generation. So if you cut down every other one, you get to eat, and the soil is going to be happy as well. So those are some of our legumes. This is what the root nodules look like. You can see it there for the clover and the fava bean. I do recommend, especially as an educational moment, when it comes time to start cutting down the cover crop at half flower, do go ahead and rip one all the way out, just so you can see what's going on at the roots. But that nitrogen, it's awesome stuff for their soil and the plants. Grains, on the other hand, are going to improve and increase the biomass. And what we learned in Master Gardener School was one rye plant, one, can slough off 2 miles of root hairs. One plant, 2 miles. That's a lot of earth moving. So we love putting winter rye, winter wheat. You can do barley. You can do some of the oats. On the right-hand side is buckwheat, one of my favorite cover crops, and it's going in right now. It's a super fast cover crop. It's a phosphorus pump. You need the phosphorus for roots. You need the phosphorus for flower development. It's very nutrient rich, amazing for the compost pile, but I put it in now any place that I've taken out my summer vegetables, but I don't have all my fall stuff in yet. And I just let it go and I let it grow. Frost will kill it and it will die back. All of those nutrients go back into the soil, and it's a beautiful plant, and the bees love it. Here are some of the seeds you're going to be looking at. Again, for your legumes, your on the left-hand side, the peas, these are fava beans. Soak the fava beans for up to 24 hours. It will loosen the seed coat. The peas I let soak for at least an hour. You can see that some of these are really small. These are your grains right here on the bottom left. You can buy them in mixes, or you can decide what you want to remedy in your soil and go plant or seed specific. Whoops. For the legumes, if you can soak them in or make a slurry of inoculant, that bottom left-hand dark powdery substance, that is an inoculant. It's basically a handshake between the root of the plant and the soil. So you can see in the middle picture here, the peas have the slurry on it. So you put a little water on there, you put the inoculant in there, mix it up, and it just hastens the plant's ability to start fixing nitrogen. And there are lots of them on the market, pretty easy to find. How are you going to get rid of the cover crop? Never, ever pull it up by the roots. Those plants have been working hard for you the entire season. Based on the size of your plot, you can cut it with hand shears. You can use a sickle or a scythe. You can use hedge trimmers. You can use a battery-powered weed whacker, but leave the roots in the soil. You can even roll over it if you've got something super heavy and just crimp the top of it so that they just fall over and die. But you're gonna, what are you gonna do with all of that stuff? You've got a couple of options. You can sort of lightly turn it into the soil. This is not the same as tilling. Tilling, we know, is just not good for all the mycorrhizal highways that are set up in the soil, even just half an inch below the surface. So you can just gently turn it over, or you can cut it off and put it in your compost pile. Be aware that if you put your cover crop into a compost pile, it's likely going to heat that compost pile up. That can be a super beneficial thing, but be aware, unless you are adding some carbon to it, your compost may go anaerobic because it gets too hot too quickly. And there's composting, of course, is a whole nother seminar we hope you'll attend. You can also just do a chop and drop. This is what we prefer to do because it's just easiest. I don't have to move anything else off. And as this decomposes, I get to have all of that. It acts as mulch. And as it decomposes, all the nutrients are going right back into the soil. Basically, you're going to cut down your cover crop either before, as it changes from being nice and willowy and very flexible. If the stems start to get woody, cut it down. If you know that you're going to be putting plants in there, transplants in there, 3 to 6 weeks from now, cut it down. Just don't let it go throughout its whole entire life cycle. For vegetables, fine, let them go. I want you to see it. But for cover crop, if you let the cover crop go all the way through its life cycle, and then you decide you want to plant something through it, good luck. I speak from hard experience at the ranch, but we did it as I would love to tell you, we did it as an experience, an experiment, but no, we did it because I didn't get to the bed. Trying to get through the roots of cover crops that are firmly established is an exercise your back is not going to forgive you for a while. So take down the cover crop 3 to 6 weeks before you plant your next season, or whenever it starts to change from being really willowy to woody. And again, there's that whole hour-long on cover crop video, Master Gardener's video, if you want. Okay, so that concludes what I've got to say, but do think back. Moving forward, what can you plant to sequester carbon? What can you plant to manage water? What else can you do in your garden to promote life, to provide food for a wide biodiversity of critters out there? And how are we going to feed the pollinators? Because we're losing them faster than is healthy for us. With that, I wish you happy gardening. I can't wait to hear of your successes.